Mediumship is so much more than speaking with the dead. Much of what we do in class is really heal yourself. Because if you're not healed and if you have all those saboteurs, all those things are going to keep you away from doing your job as a medium.
I love that you said it's healing yourself. It really is. What you have taught me has helped me bring in consistency on the ways in which I can be in my own body and in my own gifts. So I want to thank you for doing this work and for showing all of us what our capabilities and our gifts are so that we can help more people. This is what it's all about.
You're listening to the Conscious Convos and Donuts podcast.
Hello and welcome to Conscious Convos and Donuts. I'm your host, Michelle Argyris, and I have the amazing Manna Dabholkar here, who I'm so thrilled to have. Hi, Manna.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm so good and truly so excited to dive into so many things with you. Manna is such a woman of service. Not only is she a psychic medium, she also is the CEO of Gift Global Initiative. You are doing a lot of humanitarian work. You've been doing that for decades, and you're helping people like me access these abilities that sometimes we don't even know we have. And you have a beautiful way of showing us our own gifts. So I'm just so thrilled to have you here, Manna, and I just can't wait to dive into so many different things.
Thank you, Michelle. I love how you said my last name, by the way. Everyone else will skip through it. They'll be, we have the wonderful Manna over here.
Girl, I gotta get it right. I was like, I messaged Manna, can you just make sure I say, how do I say it? Okay, good. I've had people screw up my last name, and I'm like, damn it. I know there's a Y, but it's Argyris, not Argyris or Argyris or Argyris. So, okay, so many things. Firstly, I want to know, how did you know that you had a gift in psychic mediumship? Was it something you were born with? Was it something that you picked up over time? How old were you? I'm just so curious.
I was, believe it or not, I was 3 or 4 years old when I had my first real mediumship experience. So we were driving in these beautiful mountains with my family. I was sitting by the window, and as we are driving, there's this motorbike that comes right next to us, speeding to the mountains. And there were 2 men on it. One of them was wearing a helmet, and the other one who was riding was not wearing a helmet. And we are talking about 25, 30 years ago, when I don't know how many people were like wearing helmets, And my dad said, oh my God, they're going way too fast. And then about 15 minutes later, we saw the same motorcycle. They were in an accident with a truck, and the guy who was riding it had died on the spot. So as the car passed by, I just peeked my head down there to see what was going on. And I see this like spirit come up by my window. And he said, please, can you reach my family? And I'm like a 4-year-old. I can't even speak. You know what I mean? And I'm like, Mom, I see someone. And my mom's like, no, you don't. Shh, be quiet in the back seat. And then we realized a few days later, so he was out giving out his wedding invitations, this guy, and he died in an accident. And I think he wanted me to reach out to his family, but I was only 4. So that's my very first experience of kind of knowing that I could see things, feel things, sense things that other people didn't. And I didn't know how to express that. I didn't know how to tell them.
Wow. And as a 4-year-old, were you afraid when you saw that, or what was the feeling you had when you saw this? And what did it look like? Did it have like a form, or was it a feeling? Like how did you experience the spirit?
Yeah, there was no fear at all. I did get fear later in my life because my mom tried to keep me away from mediumship. I was born in a family with a long lineage of mediums. All the men on my mom's side of the family were mediums, not trained, but they were gifted mediums. So for some reason, she didn't want me to, I don't know why, but she kept me away from it. My sister too. So they kind of conditioned a little bit more fear in me as I grew up. But at that time, at 4 years old, I was excited to see this thing. It was like a white, fluffy cloudy, orby thing that came up. It did not have any form, but it spoke with me. So I was kind of fascinated by, and I still have such a vivid memory of that because it had no form. It did not look like a human, but it looked like a white orb. coming up by the window, but it could clearly speak with me, a
Wow.
language that I understood at 4. Yeah.
And was the speaking, was that words? Like, was it sounds with words? Was it symbolisms? Like, how did they communicate with you?
That the first time it was words. It felt to me like words. I don't know how they were speaking, but what I heard was actual words in the language that I understood at 4. And spirits can do that. They can speak with you any language because they're speaking a language of vibration and energy. So it doesn't matter who you're speaking with. They could be anywhere in this world. I had a client who lost her mom, and the mom was in China. And my client said, "Hey, my mom just passed away in China, speaks no English. Are you able to speak with her?" And I said, "Absolutely," because they don't speak English, they speak energy. You may understand it in English if that's your language, but they're not speaking with you in any verbal language. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So incredible. And so since that day, you just started to see more and more, and it just started to come more to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And my older sister was also a really gifted medium. And she kind of shut it down. She doesn't want to do it. Thanks to my mom, she kind of kept us really protected from it. But my mom was also the reason why I got into it. So when I was about 17 or 18, my mom passed away of cancer. And 2 months before she passed, I was nursing her. So we brought her home from the hospital and I spent all my time with her. And she was giving me these bits of information and wisdom, things that she was seeing in that state of being almost gone. And I was taking it as if I knew it. It wasn't anything new. And then my mom passed away and I was coming back home to LA. And my dad handed me a book and he said, "Your mom wants you to read this book." She gave this book to me. I said, "Okay." It was a book on mediumship.
Wow.
So somehow she kept me away from it when I was a child, but she was also the reason why I started studying mediumship at 17. Yeah.
Wow. So it's like she was giving you that messaging just before she was about to pass.
Yeah,
Really-
I think she was coming into acceptance because at the moment of death you're seeing everything, seeing through shit. I think, yeah.
Having her as a past spirit now, do you feel that she's very supportive of this
Totally.
beautiful journey you're
Yeah.
on?
When she passed, we didn't speak for about 6 years. I could see her all the time, but she would never say anything to me. And I wondered why she didn't want to speak with me. Obviously, she was going through her own. Now I understand it, having done mediumship for like 20 something years. She was healing. She needed that time to just heal her spirit, her soul, to then be ready to guide me or guide others. So now she's in our mediumship classes all the time. You know that. So she's good. Yeah, she's good. Yes, she's always there. She's wonderful now, much more open for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually had a question for you that I was going to ask you in our next class, which was, is it harder to read your immediate family members? So for example, when I went to do a mediumship reading on my mom, I was struggling to do it on her versus if I do it on someone I don't know, the information is just flowing and passing through. Is there any explanation on why that would be more difficult with someone that you're familiar with?
Oh, yeah, totally. When you're dealing with someone that you know, someone that you love, or someone that you've known for a very long time, you're using your instinct with them. And instinct doesn't work in mediumship. It's attached to your body, it's attached to your memories. So you're constantly telling yourself that, hey, I may be seeing this spirit, but I know about it. I know my grandma, she's here, but you know what I mean? You're confused between your instinct and your intuition. Mediums don't use instinct. We use intuition, which is present moment awareness, which is not tied to your past or your future. It's really just getting information right now. And that information has no logic, it has no reasoning, but it's accurate. And we go with that in mediumship. So when you read someone like your mom or your dad, somehow, if you haven't been doing this for a very long time, you lean more on your instincts than your intuition. Yeah.
Manna, it's like you're a psychic or something because you're going through all the questions that I have for you before I even get there. Instincts and intuition is one of the biggest things. When you taught that to me, I'd say it was probably about 4 or 5 months ago. That was a game changer for me. Oftentimes when I ask people what's instinct and intuition, they kind of swap it. They think intuition is a feeling. And when you taught me that it's an open vessel of information flooding through, like we're a straw, just like air coming through of just information flow that's not attached to anything, not attached to any sensations. It's not in the past. It's not in the future. It is so unwaveringly present. That's when you know you're in your intuition. I was like, oh, because I was mistaking instinct for intuition, which a lot of people do. And instinct, like you taught us, is physical sensations attached to our bodies. So in my words, and you can correct me if I'm not on it in my definition, but it would be, if I could describe instinct, it would be making an educated decision from the past experience about a future outcome. And I have a sensation attached to my body, like a gut instinct, or there could be whatever the bodily sensation is. But it's future and it's past, and it has emotions attached to it. Whereas intuition, there's no emotion. It is just strictly present. Would you say that was pretty accurate?
That is so accurate. And it's not good or bad. So I don't want anyone to think that, having an instinct is a bad thing. We are born with it. So you're going to have your instinct. You have a memory. So you have an instinct. And then you're going to have intuition. Because your instinct is so tied to your body, you can feel the butterflies in your belly and you can feel your chest racing. Those things are your instinctual reactions. Because they're so tied to our physical body, most people who are not using their pineal gland or pineal gland tend to use their instinct. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mana. Hearing we're in the same words at the same time. I was just going to get into that. So good. So can you tell us about like different tools to stay in your intuition? And I know this will take us into the pineal gland and decalcifying that. So yeah, take us through a little bit of that.
Yeah. So one of the main reasons why people are not able to use their intuition or receive messages from the other side or receive messages from their own spirit is because they're not in their body. Okay, we as human beings love to be outside the body for many different reasons. One is because we have done it a million times. We die and come back, so we are used to it. But also our body is attached to emotional trauma and physical trauma. And the spirit's like, I don't want to deal with it. So it checks out, right? So if I like to think of your body as your house, your home, your beautiful home. And for some people, it's a little disorganized. There may be a little problems, but it's yours, right? It's your home. If you leave the door open and you go on a trip and come back after 6 months, someone else is going to be in your house eating from your fridge. So this is what happens with most of us, that we kind of get checked out. We don't appreciate our bodies. We leave. And then we are like, oh my God, I'm so drained. I'm so tired. Of course you're tired. Something got into your space. Someone else is in your body now. So that is the first reason why people are unable to tap into their intuition. So I would say something like Vipassana or breath work or just body scanning your body every day to make sure that you are consciously in your body should help you be a little bit more closer to your intuition. Because your body is your laptop. If you're going to receive information, it's going to come right in your body. So you have to be in it. The second thing people can do is developing the pineal gland, the pineal gland. It's a small gland. It's a like really tiny pine cone shaped gland that sits in the back of your head. And it is attached to your sixth chakra. So all these different glands that you have in your endocrine system, they are attached to one of these 7 chakras. Okay, and which is why the chakra meditation is amazing, because it will keep those glands flowing and pumping and good. The more we, like in my case, when I was 4 years old, my pineal gland was pumping. It's great. So I was able to speak with the spirit. As we begin to grow up, because of classical conditioning, people telling us not to believe in our own intuition, toxins in our food, our lifestyle, no workouts, bad food, smoking and drinking and alcohol, all those things result in that gland becoming like a rock. It stops working. So now your satellite is not working. So if your satellite's not working, you're not going to get the data, because obviously you're receiving it through your pineal gland, through your crown space, through your pineal gland. If those things are not functioning, and we've been doing those biospace reports that you and I can talk about that, I can show people literally how small your sixth and your seventh is as compared to all the other ones. If your
Wow.
pineal is not working fine. When your pineal gland's working fine, all those chakras are beautifully aligned and they're the same size.
Yeah. Can you pull that up actually, Manna, and show us a little bit about your biospace reports that you do?
Yeah. So I'm going to show you, the first thing I'm going to show you is the chakra alignments, how it needs to be. Okay.
Cool.
And for most people, it's not like that, unfortunately. So let me show you this real quick. And I love this report so much. You see all those 7 chakras,
Yes.
starting from the red all the way up to the purple, which is your crown. And they all need to be aligned like how you see it in the report. This is my report. Okay. They need to be a little bit more aligned, but they're good. They're in a good place. And when you're not working on yourself, this is what happens. Your chakras go all the way in and out, small and big. It's not aligned. Now we have a machine that can trace it.
So cool.
Right. But this is what psychics do. They're telling you your chakras are not aligned. Your pineal gland is not pumping. You're not going with your intuition. And that machine is doing the same thing now, which is amazing. Yeah.
Wow, that's really awesome. And you were showing me, Manna, too, the story of the conductor. Do you want to take us through that and show us what happens to their aura after they were finished conducting for, I guess?
Yeah, so let's talk about aura before I can show you that. So aura is your biospace. It's the beautiful electromagnetic space that each one of us has. We all have it, which is the amazing thing about it. The health of your biospace, the health of your aura depends on you. Okay, so there are going to be rips and tears in your auric space if you're not good with it. Meaning if you have too many negative thoughts, if you have repeated thoughts, if your mind is like wild, it's not steady, if you're drinking, if you're smoking, if you have bad lifestyle, if you're very emotional and you have these emotional outbursts, all those things are going to result in rips and tears into your auric field. At the same time, if you are doing something that you absolutely love to do, but you have to expend a lot of energy, like the conductor that I mentioned, he loves to be a conductor. He loves to be on the stage and perform, but he's expending a lot of energy, and that creates rips and tears in his aura. Right. So let me show you what that looks like real quick, and then we'll talk about it. But it's so fascinating, like the auric health to me, because what I want to address it, because if depending on your auric health, your organs are going to be balanced or disbalanced, by the way. So it doesn't just stop with your auric health. It actually results in you manifesting some kind of a disease, maybe like 6 months down the line. It may not show up in your blood report today, but if it's showing up in your auric report, it's going to manifest in something at some point.
How far can your aura go? How far out can it reach?
In the past or in the future?
Oof, both. Take us through it.
Yeah, give me one. I'm trying to pull that up so I can show it to everyone, because this is what we did with, let me see if I can.
Manna, you said something really interesting that really stuck to me. And forgive me if I have the percentage wrong. It's either 93% or 97%. I'm going to go with 93. That's what my intuition is telling me right now. That 90%, 93% of our thoughts become our auric reality. So to be super mindful of all of our thoughts, because that's what actually plays out into our energetic field around us.
Yeah, it's about 93% of your state of mind is projected into your auric health. And then 7% is your words and your actions. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
your words and your actions count, but it has a lot to do with, and we can get right into the manifestation thing too, where people kind of pray for things, they'll verbalize things that they really want to manifest, but vibrationally, the state of mind is saying there's a lack of something. So it's not so much what you're saying or what you're doing, it's what you're projecting in this electromagnetic space that's going to come back to you. And which is why most people don't manifest whatever they want to manifest. They manifest the other thing, like the exact opposite. It's because,
Mm-hmm.
of course, if you are saying that I would love to have, let's say, a Ferrari, what you're really saying is I have a lack of something in my life, right? And so if
Mm-hmm.
you're projecting the lack through your vibration, the lack's
Mm-hmm.
going to get multiplied.
Yeah, I know. So if you're seeking safety, then you're never going to feel safe.
That's right.
It's just it feels backwards, but it makes so much sense. The polarity.
If you're feeling safe, then you are going to be able to manifest safety. So here's the auric field of the conductor. So this
Cool.
is a report that was done before and after. Before he went on stage is what you see on the left side. His aura has a little, maybe, it's not completely balanced, but it's good. It's full.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the right-hand side, you see after he was done with performing, his auric health was like at the minimal, like there's rips and tears and gaps. So this person's going to go home and collapse. Like they're going to be so depleted and drained for the next entire day is because they literally killed their aura through the sound and expending all that energy out there.
And so would you say that was a good, or is there a good or bad thing? Like if we're putting out that much, is there a way in which we can keep our aura intact, but still express to that capacity? Because a lot of artists were all in. It's like a musician gets up on stage and they sing their heart out. So and then we get tired after, or for me, I do breath work and then I'm exhausted after. For you, Manna, when you're doing psychic mediumship, do you feel that you get tired after your readings?
So let me answer that question in two different parts. Okay, so the first thing, it's amazing if you enjoy what you're doing, okay, but you want to have good boundaries so that you also need to know how to detach and refuel your body. Most people can go for days and they don't even think about what they're doing to their aura. Like think about people who perform. Like Taylor Swift is performing almost every night and she's like putting everything out there, right, on the stage. This is what's happening to her. Her body is feeling good because she's vibrating higher. So this man that I just showed you, he was at 61 joules of energy before, and then it spiked after he was done because he was feeling great. Like the light, the sound coming out of his body is great. But that has nothing to do with your auric field. You're still expending so much energy, it's going to create rips and tears in it. So he needs to have some kind of self-care routine to heal that.
To
So
repair
maybe, absolutely. So maybe take a day off, or sleep, or eat, or have a good lifestyle. A lot of artists out there would drink or do drugs, and that actually ruins it way more than performance. Performance is fine. I mean, that's you're enjoying it. At least you're vibrating higher, right? The second piece to it is, let's talk about you, for instance. When you do sound baths, you're enjoying it. You love sound, right? Now, when you do sound bath, your aura is probably going to look like that conductor. Okay, there are going to be rips and tears because you gave so much of you, but you're vibrating higher. So what does that mean? It means that if you don't have a good self-care routine, your aura has rips and tears, and now you're a powerful creator. Like you're vibrating so much higher that you're going to manifest left and right, but your aura is damaged. So imagine what you could potentially manifest.
If you take care of all the repairs, which is a consistent practice.
Yes.
People do things once, they feel amazing, and then they never do it again. And then they wonder why they start to feel crappy. And it's like, well, there's a consistency to continuing to nurture and to fill our bodies with, whether it be sunshine medicine or breathwork medicine, or even, I know one you taught me was decalcifying the pineal gland by just gazing at fire. Yes. Not the sun, everyone. We didn't say the sun, we said fire.
Yeah, fire or a lamp or a candle, not the sun, because you will go blind if you do that daytime. It's interesting because you asked me something about how do I feel, right, when I do psychic mediumship. When I do mediumship readings, I feel amazing. I can do multiple mediumship readings. I can do platform readings, like 500 people in the audience kind of readings, and I don't feel anything. I feel amazing from it.
During or after? Both.
During,
Okay.
after. During, I'm channeling, so it's a great experience anyways. After, I feel amazing. Like, I don't feel like a crash. I'm ready to go the very next morning. Obviously, I have really good boundaries. I've worked on them for years. So at this point, I'm not seeing spirits left and right. Like, I see them when I want to see them, which is what I, enforce in our classes. I say, you don't want to see spirits all the time. It's not healthy for you. You want to see them when you want to see them. Okay. So when I do psychic readings is when I'm reading a living individual. So if I was to read you, tell you about your aura, tell you about your chakras, your health, relationship, money, all those things, that's when I feel tired. That's when I feel drained. So psychic readings can drain and deplete you. Mediumship readings feel like a high.
Wow. I noticed even in my practicing of psychic mediumship, sometimes clients will think they're getting a psychic reading versus a mediumship reading too. And then sometimes we have to explain at the beginning, nope, this is not a psychic reading. If we want that, we can go that route. However, if you want to connect with past spirits, it's a completely different channeling. Do you want to walk us through what the difference of the psychic reading versus the mediumship reading is?
Yeah, absolutely. So a psychic and medium are different. Most people kind of use them interchangeably, or they think it's the same thing, and it's absolutely not. All mediums out there are psychics. You have to go through psychic training to then become a medium, but not all psychics are mediums. Okay, so what does a psychic do? A psychic is reading the living human, as I mentioned, or a living pet, something that is seated in a mass form, basically. So you're reading the aura, you're picking up present moment energy of the living people, or or space, or whatever you're trying to read, an object, right? Could also be an object that you're trying to read. Mediumship is clean. It's really speaking with people who have passed away. So when I think about psychic, the way the difference is like this. With the psychic readings, the goal is to give someone validation and give them guidance, give them direction for something that they're seeking in their life. Maybe they need some clarity about relationship or money or health or something, and that's what you're bringing to them. So there are only two people in the equation. It's you and it's the person that you're reading. And in a mediumship reading, you are bringing messages from a family member or a friend or someone that they knew who has now passed away. They have transitioned. So there are three people in the equation, sometimes more if more spirits will show up. So you, the medium, are in the middle of a living person and a dead person. So that's what mediums do. We don't use messengers or spirit guides in mediumship. In a psychic reading, you could use a spirit guide. Mediumship, also the goal of mediumship is connection. So you're trying to connect a living family member with someone who has passed away. In psychic space, the goal is validation and direction and guidance. And the sitter or the person you're reading is seeking something. They need clarity. They need direction. So that's the difference between a psychic and a medium. And when I think about in terms of spiritual education, if you were to go to a spiritual university, your bachelor's would be psychic studies. And then within that, there will be different modalities, right? You could do tarot, you could do breath work, you could do Reiki. All these things are for living people and pets. And then once you get into your master's, that is mediumship, because now you're adding another layer, another dimension to it. And then the PhD would be channeling, physical channeling.
All this stuff gets me so excited just hearing it. And it's cool because, Manna, is it not true that everyone has the ability to experience their own inner psychic if we just, one, you have to believe it. You taught us a lot about belief systems, because if you have self-doubt, which I know we talk about a lot, no matter what you're capable of, if you're not believing it, it's not going to play out. So believing and truly just accepting things coming to you is a really big part of being able to be in that intuitive space, to trust what you're seeing, right? Doing these readings with you and learning how to do them myself, sometimes you question, wait, am I seeing this, or is this actually a spirit that I'm linked to and they're providing information? Because the way in which they provide the information is not just like us talking. There's different forms of communications, from symbolisms and different clairs, our taste, our smell. It could be an inner knowing. It could be a visual. There's so many different ways we can tap into it. So for you, what do you find is your strongest clair? I know we probably have all 5 of them. Or how many clairs do we have again? We have
8 clairs.
8.
There are 4 dominant ones, which work for most people, which would be your clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. You have clairaudience, clear hearing. You have clairsentience, which is your sensation, feeling something. And then you have claircognizance. So those, which is clear knowing, like you just know it, right? So those are the 4 which are pretty much developed for most people out there. But then you have the minor clairs, the 4 others, which is clear taste, clear gustance. You have clear aliens, which is smelling. You have clear empathy, which is feeling the emotions, not really getting them onto you, but feeling the spirit's emotions. And then clear tangency, which is touching an object, like psychometry. You walk to an antique store, touch something, and you get an impression of it, you know? So those are the 8 clairs that people have to develop to become a completely rounded medium, because messages, like you mentioned, come in different ways. You know, they're not always going to come in as a clairvoyant message. It could come in as a smell or taste. And if you're not developing it, then you're missing a big piece of the message that's been given to you.
Yeah. And it's really cool because sometimes you think it's going to be one type of clair and you're actually strong in a different clair. Like for me, clairgustant, I had no idea. But every time I keep doing these readings, I'm tasting cookies, I'm tasting plantain, I'm tasting grapes. Like it just keeps coming up. And it's interesting because it's not always about the food. Sometimes the food's coming in because it's a message for someone. Sometimes the food's coming in because it's a message for, working on your own health, your personal health. Like I remember when I was describing the grape in one of our readings, and it wasn't about the taste of the grape. It felt like it was so much more than that. It felt like there was a nutrient in the grape or something that had to do with it that was dire for that woman's health. So it's, how do you receive this, right? Like, how do we know this? It's just this like flood of information coming through, and you have to trust it, but you have to believe what you're receiving, because if you don't believe it, then you're going to be in your self-doubt, like you say. And if you're in your self-doubt, it's really hard to channel.
Yeah.
And you talk about saboteurs, which I'd love for you to maybe talk to us a little bit about too, like perfectionist, victim, all these little assholes, I call them, inside our brain that are just like getting in the way of us really truly believing in ourselves, and how to bring us back to that baseline. I know you taught us baseline where there's no emotion attached to it. It's just a loving awareness vibration where you don't have anything distracting you. You can just be ready to channel.
It's funny because mediumship is so much more than speaking with the dead. And, we practice, we have clients in the class and we do that. But much of what we do in class is really heal yourself. Because if you're not healed, and if you have all those things that you just mentioned, the saboteurs, the voices in your head that say, you're not good enough, that is not good enough, you're not perfect, don't say this, you're going to sound stupid. All those things are going to keep you away from doing your job as a medium. And when you have those family members who are really like, they've just lost someone, like the video that you guys saw, right? Where this family had lost their son and the brother, and the family's crying. And when you actually sit and do mediumship for a family like that, it just makes sense. It's like I can spend as much time as I want just to see this, just to make sure that these families receive the healing that they need. I'll work on myself. I remember this one example with the saboteurs many years ago when I was very new in mediumship. I was reading someone, and the spirit came in and they started gave me a taste of macaroons, and I love macaroons. Like that's one of I don't eat sugar as much, but that's like my favorite thing. So I was like, oh man, like, is it like a matching picture or something? Like, how do I trust it? Because I like macaroons. Am I making this up? So I was still
Mhm.
in that training phase, maybe like 17, 18 years ago. I said, you know what? I'm just going to go tell her that. And I said, your friend here, your spirit is giving me a taste of macaroons. And she said, I don't know. This doesn't make sense. She's like, I don't like macaroons and I don't think he would like macaroons either. And I'm like, okay, I just felt kind of sad because that information was, wrong.
The
And then,
validation. I know that
yeah,
feeling when you start out,
right.
when we get validation, we're like, oh my God,
The
you
next
get,
day, though,
yeah.
the next day, she texted me and she said, you know what? I just remembered there's a little French cafe in Studio City called Nesman. Okay.
Mm,
And they keep these beautiful macaroons that the owner brings in from France. She's French. And she said, the only time I've ever had a macaroon is when my friend, the spirit who had died, took me
mhm.
to this cafe and we ordered macaroons and we had
Wow.
those. I just
Wow.
got like, like goosebumps all over my body. I was like, thank God I just fought through that saboteur. And I said, I'm going to give this information, even if it makes no sense to me. Even if it's
Mm-hmm.
making me doubt myself, I'm just going to give it because it
Mm-hmm.
will make sense if it has to make sense for them.
Totally. And it takes us having to try and just see, because if we hold ourselves back, we'll never be able to know if we are capable. And so, we don't do psychic mediumship for the validation, of course, but when a newer psychic medium like myself, who's just tapping into these gifts and trusting and believing in it, it's like just giving myself the grace of a little bit of validation when something comes through, because I'm like, okay, something is right here. I mean, we did a reading the other day, and for the first time, I was always scared to say names because saying a name is so specific. And if you get the name wrong, you're like, your guests will just be like, well, I don't know who that is. And then you feel bad about your reading. But in the last reading, and I'm sure this feels good too, as a teacher and as a mentor, to watch your students start to really believe in themselves and start to take that risk and just say what's coming up. And we got 3 names. We got 3 names in that reading, and they were all direct links to immediate family, which was a really empowering moment for me because I still sometimes question and doubt the information that's flowing through. And when something like that happens, it's like, no, this is real. You're experiencing this. And not only that, the more I believe in myself, the more I can help heal more people and myself. It's just such a beautiful healing technique, psychic mediumship. I love that you said it's healing yourself. It really is. What you have taught me has helped me just bring in consistency on the ways in which I can be in my own body and in my own gifts. Also, it helps the families. You showed such a beautiful clip that I watched of a mother and daughter who had, I believe it was the son that had passed. And it was just incredible to watch you channeling because I could see you were in that space where there's no emotions attached, right? You're just completely in I call it the straw of information. And the amount of healing that went down for the mother and the daughter and the information that they wanted to know. They had questions. And they didn't feel like they were complete and at ease with the way in which the son had passed and the brother had passed. And so having you there felt like a moment of just being with them. It's almost like if you could have dinner one last time with someone that's passed, who would it be? It's like having a moment to just be with them. And I know this is a feeling, Manna, because you did a reading for me not too long ago, and now I'm going to start to cry on my own podcast. You brought my grandmother in, who I absolutely adore so much. And I was hoping she'd come through, and you told me you went on a beautiful walk with her and my grandfather. And there's no way the information that you gave me, you could have known. You couldn't Google it. It's impossible. And some of it was in the moment too. So it's just, even as someone who's doing this, I still have self-doubt. I'm like, wait, is this Googleable thing? But it's not. It's just, you're just so unwaveringly present with a link. And I watched you do it for me. And that was my first time receiving it. And I couldn't believe how much you knew from the schooling she had, being the only one that could get education. Her sister wasn't able to. Actually, I didn't tell you, my grandmother's father was shot in front of her while she was hiding in a barrel during the war. And so she had to get put into a schooling with all girls schooling. And then the sister didn't get to. The sister actually stayed with her mom. So of the two, only one got education. So how could you possibly have known this information? I barely know it. I only heard it from my grandmother's mouth, and it's not written anywhere, right? So these beautiful validations, one as the facilitator of psychic mediumship and in the receiving end, is just so insanely amazing and incredibly healing. So I want to thank you for doing this work and for showing all of us what our capabilities and our gifts are so that we can help more people. This is what it's all about, right?
Absolutely.
It's never about us. But how can we keep sharing it? Like, we're meant to share once we figure out things so that someone else can share it, and then they can share it. And it becomes this big, beautiful web of sharing this collective consciousness, this beautiful energy field. It just grows so big. So yeah, I want to say thank you for that. And then I want to launch into one other thing. How can we use this healing, the psychic mediumship, in investigations? Like, how do we use it to help investigators figure out what happened on a murder case or anything like that? I'd love for you to speak onto that as well.
Yeah, I've done that. So I can tell you it's pretty accurate when you're working with the right kind of a medium. One of my clients, his dad was murdered, and they were trying to find the murder weapon. They had an idea of who had done it. They just didn't have the murder weapon. So we spoke with the father, and it was actually a really light reading because the father came in and had lots of mean things to say about the mom because they were divorced. And the son was like, yeah, this is them. Like, they would do that to each other. And then we asked him if he knows where the murder weapon is. And he said, oh, yeah, there's a lake, and they put it in there. And they were actually able to find the knife in the lake.
Wow. So you went in with the investigators.
No, I just gave him a reading, and he took that information back. He wasn't even here, so it wasn't from the US. It was someone overseas.
Wow.
And they were able to find the murder weapon. One of the two, so it was done by two people who worked for this guy. One of them had already passed away, but they were able to get the other one because they found the weapon. So if you are working with the right medium, if there's no doubt in your mind, what mediums do is, just receiving information, then I think it has a great future in investigation. I also want to say something about the healing piece, that the two things that happen for me with psychic mediumship, which I hope for every one of my students, is the first thing is you understand death a little bit more. We're never going to fully understand it until we die, but you kind of become comfortable in it. And it's important because you're not arriving in death chaotic and confused. The second thing that happened for me was the idea of self-acceptance, because if you are trying to live who you are and yet you find yourself seeking acceptance and validation from other people, then you're not really living who you are. So when you start practicing mediumship, you get to a point where you have to let go of that validation. You have to let go of receiving acceptance from your sitter. And it becomes such a great workout for your muscle that eventually you just have, you require no validation and you begin to live who you are. And it's a process, but you get there faster with mediumship because you know that. Initially you needed that validation because it felt sweet. When someone said, yes, Michelle, you're right. Now it doesn't matter. You're just doing your job as a medium. Whether they receive it or not is their problem, not yours. And that's a great way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the validation, I feel, is really for just believing in yourself.
Yeah.
And once you start to believe in yourself, you no longer need the validation, right? But when we're trying anything new, whether it's like a new, when I got into breath work, I needed to hearing from people, wow, I felt a transformation. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So what I'm doing is actually doing something. But now since I've done it for 2 years, I'm kind of like, it's just, I'm here to do my job. I'm here to channel and to be unwaveringly here so people can go into their depths and heal whatever they have to heal. And I'm here to hold that container with so much love for them. And that's it. Like there's not much more to it other than just really truly holding the container so that they can heal themselves, because we're not healing anyone. I think that's something to also also mention. It's very important. It takes your power away if you're giving someone you've healed me. There goes my power. But if I know I'm healing myself, I can get my power back. And we're just holding different types of containers for people to access that type of healing.
Yeah, you're a vessel, which is why your vessel needs to be very steady and healed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not a healed vessel, if you're unsteady, if you don't have good boundaries and there are emotional ups and downs, then you're not a good vessel to channel information for others. And I wouldn't recommend that you even try it until you begin to heal yourself.
Yeah. Boundaries is a big thing too. I know we went over, I had some really fun questions come in. So yesterday I went on Instagram Live. So do you mind if I shoot a couple of questions that people had from the Instagram Live yesterday? So, let me see, where was the question about, boundaries? Oh, another thing, Manna, I wanted you to touch on actually before I jump into this is the use of empathy. How do you feel about empathy and psychic mediumship? I think this is important.
Empathy is going to lead you to mediumship, but empathy will ruin you in mediumship. So you want to develop your empathy into compassion, which is a little bit more neutral version of empathy, which, like I mentioned, clear empathy, where you're not really taking on the sadness and the grief and the depression and whatever your sitter, your client is dealing with. You're simply noticing it. And it's outside of your aura. And that's compassion. It allows you to be a little bit more empowered to do something about it, to help them. When you are empathetic, you're going to be down in the dumps with that person. And it doesn't play good in mediumship because you have to maintain your vibration to speak with spirits who don't have a body. And they're vibrating higher than us.
Right. So if you're taking on the emotion of what they're taking on, it would be a lot harder to channel because it's pulling out of your baseline.
Yeah, just imagine that video, right? That the mom and the daughter trying to speak with the brother and the son. If I was going to yell and scream and cry with them, I'm wasting their time and I'm wasting my time and the spirit's time because there's no way. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do this for 20 years if every time I did a reading, I feel like, sad and depressed. I feel amazing. Even if it's a tough reading, I feel great because all I did was raise my vibration to speak with them, bring them messages, give it to the family, and be detached from it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking when you were doing the reading for me, when I started to cry over my grandmother, if you started to cry with me, I don't know how I would receive that because in one way, it's like, okay, so she understands that the feelings of what I'm feeling, which is nice to be held, but it's not your job to do that for me or with me. Your job is to just continue to channel her. That's the healing. That's your purpose in that container.
Yeah. And you can maintain being compassionate. So if someone starts crying, you can take enough pauses. You can see if they're doing okay. You can ask them if you want them to, if you should stop. You can do all those things which shows them verbally that you care about their emotions. But if you get emotional with them, then there's absolutely no way for you to channel information at that point. So,
and it's almost like trumping their experience a little bit too, because it's not your experience, it's theirs. So we're almost making it.
Yeah, it's your grandma. Why am I crying? Right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, really cool. Okay, so let me jump into some of the questions that our Instagram Live had for you. Someone asked, what is the difference between a soul and a spirit? I don't even know the answer to this.
The soul and the spirit to me is almost the same thing. The consciousness is different. So your consciousness is like, when the sun rises and if you don't see the sun, but there's light, just by looking at the light in the sky, there's sun somewhere. So just by looking at your body being alive and functioning, you know that there's consciousness in it. Doesn't mean your soul or your spirit is inside of it. It may you be checked out. You may be like having an out of body experience, but you can function because the consciousness is still in your body. When we die, your soul, spirit, the same thing for me, exits, and then your consciousness will exit as well with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I want to mention that when someone is conceived and you have a baby, the first thing that comes into the belly is consciousness at the moment of conception. And then you have some time before a spirit or a soul enters the belly. So same process.
Manna, I was just going to ask you that question. And then I went, do I ask her this or do I get to the next one on the Instagram live? And then you brought it right in. So she's hearing my thoughts as we're getting going here. Yeah. So, okay, here's another one. Can spirits move objects in our physical world?
Yes. Yeah. Because they are energy. I've seen it actually captured on camera where a spirit was trying to, like, a very troubled spirit that was lost, trying to like kick off like phone and stuff inside a baby's room because they were so angry about something. So yes, they can actually move things. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. We also have you had an angry spirit come through and can it be harmful?
So if it's a transition spirit, like someone who has completely passed away, yeah, they're just like us. They're angry spirits and they're very enlightened spirits. They have the same rules that apply here. The only difference is they're not in a body. So when you're doing these readings, of course, you can pick up a spirit that's depressed, that is sad, resentful, or maybe happy, in love, all kinds. Just like you have different human beings, you have different kinds of spirits. If it's a lost soul, like a spirit that died but didn't transition, typically their energy is very contracted and very dense. They may not always harm you, but it's just a very depressing, draining energy because they're lost. They don't know which way to go. So their vibration could feel like draining and tiring.
Yeah, which is also why it's so important to upkeep our spiritual, like, auric field too, so that we can upkeep those boundaries, especially if we're going to get into this work, because we want to be able to say, I know you taught us, letting the spirit know, okay, you can enter. Okay, it's now time to exit. Thank you so much. And that clear boundary. But if our body's not that healthy and our spiritual, auric field isn't that healthy, then it's easier for the spirits to kind of come in and out.
I mean, even in the example of the conductor, right? So if you're vibrating higher, meaning you have a better means to manifest things, your auric field is damaged. And let's say you're putting a lot of fear and doubt out there because that's what's going through your mind, then imagine what you're going to manifest. Because you have the key to manifestation, you're vibrating higher, you don't have any boundaries, the aura is damaged, and what you're putting out is negative. So if you're putting negative stuff out, you can manifest things which are troublesome for you.
Gosh, to be so mindful of our thoughts, so mindful of our thoughts. Most of our thoughts are negative than positive. I forget what the statistic
90%.
is.
90% are negative. So we have 60,000 thoughts on average. 90% are negative. 85% of the 90% are repeated. So you repeat the same thought every day. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, we really have to start just changing that mindset and just like being not judgmental around the negativity, because we're humans, and humans, it's hard. We have a lot of stuff coming through, but just being able to observe and witness, okay, so this is not a supportive thought. How can I change the neuroplasty, or how do I say neuroplasty?
The neurons, yes, the neural pathways. Yep.
The neural pathways to change that limited belief, change that thought that doesn't feel supportive. Oh, Manna, I could literally have so many questions for you. Maybe we can even jump on another episode, but I would love to dive in even into like the neurons and how you can change that. It can change your whole life.
Yeah.
And karma. Oh my God, Manna has so much. I mean, getting into ancestral healing and karmic contracts. And I mean, you're one of my favorite people to chat about all of this. And I feel like I've learned so much from you. Let me just see here if there's anything else that I really wanted to get on this episode. Okay. I do have one that would be really amazing. I know someone really wanted to hear the answer to this. How to access or find a way to scientifically demonstrate the existence of soul.
Oh my God, there's so much data, guys. You'll be like blown away. Okay, so I'm just going to give you one, which you can go and research. It's called the Soul Phone Project, which is my favorite, where scientists around the world, neuroscientists, all kinds of beautiful people out there are creating a phone that you can use to speak with your dead family members. And it's in advanced stages of being done. They are working with 8 different spirits. One of them is Einstein, and there are like 7 others. So this is a great project to go read about because they will demonstrate the existence of soul. I also have a student whose husband is working on consciousness and tracing and tracking it. So very soon we are going to invite him to speak with our class so he can show you what he has found with that kind of research. Yeah.
So wild. So wild. I would love to see you and Robert Edward Grant talking science and psychic mediumship in one. Maybe that'll be one of the next episodes, just having the 3 of us. And I want you guys to both just riff on the two because I think they're so insanely interconnected. Not just psychic mediumship, but like all of it, energetics and science.
Yeah.
It's
science, psychic mediumship is quantum physics. We just call it psychic mediumship and people get afraid of it. But what you're studying is physics. And if you were paying attention in school, you wouldn't have a doubt in your mind about any of this.
Totally. I wish there was a class. It's sad that we don't have classes on understanding your feelings and what are your capabilities as a human being. I think most of us don't know. We don't even know.
Imagine grieving. Like, when have you had a class in school about how to grieve? You know, people have no idea how to grieve, and it's one of the constants in our life that you're gonna lose something, and then you'll have to find out a way to grieve and get over it. So there's so much that we don't have in our education system, and it's not just here, just overall. You know what I mean? We don't teach our kids to be intuitive. We teach them to be very logical and think about books and stuff, and which is fine, because after all, psychic mediumship happens to be science too. But it's an intuitive science. You know, you have to really trust yourself to know what you know is right.
Right. Yeah. And this is where these teachings, even if we have to get on podcasts to share it or create a ceremony to share it or share it with one person, every single time we're having these types of conversations, we're opening up the possibility for everyone who is listening to also believe in themselves and then access this type of reality, which is more real. Energy is more real than anything that we see. Everything we see, and we can get in, this is a whole nother combo, but like everything we see, the only thing that we know it is true is that we are loving awareness in a spirit, in a body.
Yeah. And you know, I would leave people with this message. If you believe that, which is pretty much science, it's been proven that we are a lot of empty space and energy. That's how we all are, right? There's a law of conservation of energy that we study in school that says energy cannot be destroyed. You can create new energy. It just goes from one form to the other. Okay, so then the question is, if you're all energy and empty space and you die, what happens to that energy? Yeah, I'll just leave people with that. Give me an answer. If you don't believe in afterlife, tell me what happened to the energy that was stored in your body.
Yeah, where does it go?
Yeah.
What do you be? Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, I have one last breakout question for you, Manna. We have this on every episode, which is, and it's a very, very serious question. If you were a donut, which one would you be and why?
Oh, a chocolate.
Chocolate.
Because I like chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love chocolates. So I would definitely be a chocolate. I also like how they look. Kind of go with my skin color, you know?
Yeah, I love it. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening in. This is Conscious Convos and Donuts, and I cannot wait to chat with you guys on the next episode. Thank you, Manna.
Thank you.
Don't forget to sign up for the Illuminate community for my live and recorded meditations, breathwork, and guidance support calls. Tap the link on the screen or in the bio of this episode. I'll see you soon.